ora tātou, you're listening to Hine Ki Te Wheiao, a space where we hold kōrero that matter, stories of strength, learning, struggle and healing. In this, we centre the voices of Wāhine Māori and explore maternal mental health through a lens grounded in Mātauranga Māori and lived experience. In this episode, we have Cindy Kawana talking to her lived experience and pathways to healing as a Wāhine Māori. For anybody struggling right now, help is available. Call Lifeline Aotearoa on 0800 543 354. Know that I love you, so maybe if you could introduce yourself to the whānau. Ko wai koe no hea koe.
Kia ora, ko Cindy Kawana taku ingoa. He uri a hau o nā rua hini rangi nā tiro anō I rangitāne ki Wairarapa. But very much my heart sits under the maunga of Taranaki.
Duits.
Yeah, the southern coast, the wild west beaches that ironically settles my soul even when it's really rough. Yeah. So that's where I always go back to, that little beach.
I love
facing
that.
south, yeah.
I love that. So you just mentioned you're from Taranaki whānui. You rep that hard. I love that.
Absolutely hard. He's more than a maunga. You know, he is, and we talk about it all the time, our tupuna. So it's koro Taranaki.
Wow.
Because the way we see it's really different.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's reflective of who we are as peoples as well.
Koro Taranaki. I think maybe this is a good segue because you say the way that we see it is really different. Different to...
I think everybody. So, you know, he's our koro and we talk about it and him in that way. You know, the way we behave on the maunga is different. The expectations of anybody else that goes on the maunga. Like standing on the top is just totally frowned upon because that's standing on our koro's head. Yeah. And we know what that means if you recognise human form. So why don't we do the same, give the same respect to him?
For our maunga.
A lot of times we do things, we have no idea why we do it. It just is, you know, it's that space of mōhio. I listened to this kraua from Te Arawai last week or the week before. And he talked about Mātauranga, the difference between Mātauranga and mōhio, because I really like the use of the word mōhio rather than Mātauranga. Yeah. And he said, he talks about it as Mātauranga being that knowledge that sits on your shoulder. It sits there so that everybody else can see that our knowledge is of value. And mōhio is the knowledge that sits in your puku. Okay. And it's not for others don't necessarily see it, but you just know it. You know what you know because you know. You know, this Western knowledge and even this religious knowledge has been right, and yet we have to fight for our own knowledge. Yeah. And justify it in some way and say, actually, we've got research. Like, why do we need research on this stuff? Yes. What's that about?
I've been thinking about people that say, like, researchers that come in and somebody with, let's say you're going for your master's, they come to you to get your pukenga to then put it in this case study that now gives almost value to whatever it is, whatever the kaupapa is. And I hate that.
I hear that, I understand that, but there's another side to that story and it depends on who the researcher is and who the person is. And I think that's where we need to be really mindful. You know, are we handing this knowledge over just so somebody can have a piece of paper that sits on their wall? Because that's what it is, you know. You know, and as somebody that has got two flippin' degrees, I don't have.
Do you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because they're not. The piece of paper on my wall is not important. They're not even framed. Yeah. They sit in the cupboard in my house.
I love that.
But what it is around the knowledge and why did I do it and what's this about? And that's where I think we need to really think about. So why is this person coming to me and what knowledge do they want? Is this about so they can stick a piece of paper on their wall and go, I'm now worth an extra 10,000 or 20,000 or 30,000? Or am I doing this to validate the stuff? Yes, we shouldn't have to validate it, to validate this knowledge so that systems and things change. And that's really different.
Yeah.
So there are some researchers that I have huge respect for.
Yeah.
Like huge, because it's not about them, it's about
Their kaupapa.
and our collective well-being and what's going on.
That's a good way to think about it and actually challenge, because I think I've become so used to, not gonna lie, I've been judged before. I've been judged because I haven't had a certain degree in a certain something, and quite often I've been judged by people who aren't Māori. Māori don't care. A lot of my mates who are Māori, even if they do have degrees, don't actually care. It's the non-Māori that I've heard stuff from.
It's a system.
Yeah. And maybe on that note, like before I get into anything that I've kind of experienced along the whole judgment stigma line, can you let me know, is there anything that's like that comes to mind for you? Anything specifically that you're just like, oh, look, this has happened to me, and how did you deal with it?
Look, there's lots of things. I'm you know me, I'm really political and got lots that I think about in spaces. Us fitting into Western ways of being and behaving is detrimental to who we are as a people. And I say that, and I know we've had a brief talk about this, about my own experience, with my sister in suicide. And, the system tells us we can't talk about it. Don't talk about it because there might be somebody else that will follow suit or whatever that is. But actually, what does that mean? Do we then forget that person and all of the amazing stuff that they've done in this, the incredible life that they've lived, even if for a while it might have been really difficult for their own reasons. And if we don't talk about it, nothing changes. And there's still stigma around suicide.
Yeah.
And actually, it's the people that are left behind that is the most difficult place.
Yeah. They carry the most.
Absolutely. They carry the stigma and the shame for their whānau, because people make judgments. So if you talk about it, you can see it in their eyes. There's a judgment for that person that's passed. Oh, why did they do that? They're this person, they're that person, and people pass judgments all the time. Now, my sister was terminal, had been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, so she was going to die. It was inevitable. She chose to do what she did. Would it have been easier? Probably, if she had died from lung cancer, because it wasn't a choice. I was really angry with her for a while, but this is for my own selfish reason, angry that she left me in a role that I was never meant to be, and that was the oldest child. It was never my journey. Like, that's not my journey. She was the oldest of us all. She had beautiful reo and taranaki reo, and was part of the revitalisation of taranaki reo with some really amazing people. She was at home, so she always meant I had a place to go home to.
And she was your tuakana? She was just your tuakana.
Lots of times she was quieter and I was out the gate and loud, but we knew how we both operated. She was also the only one of my siblings that truly strongly identified with our whakapapa. So I lost that person that thinks and sees the world the same as I did. So I was really angry with her. Like, how dare you do this? How dare you leave me in this role that I was never meant to do? And I still struggle with it. 14 years later, I still struggle in that space.
First of all, sorry to hear about your sister. And you're right, like how you said, it's actually the whānau that face the stigma and the judgment. You're absolutely right, because I'm not going to lie, I've been on the end that throws judgment at a whānau who has lost someone to suicide, and I'm going to own that. I'll take that. That's a bit of a weddle. to me actually hearing that.
How much of that influence of your view was influenced by the church?
A lot.
You know, and the church has a huge amount to answer for. And, you know, this is the problem. This is the problem with Western, a huge amount of Western systems, ways, beliefs, thought processes. Why are we putting so much stigma on an action that they've done? And why, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
I talk about it as much as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked about it since the day she suicided.
Yeah. After she had passed, you were talking about the stigma and the judgment that can be put on whānau. The statistics, I think it was last year, the statistics for Wāhine Māori who commit suicide, we were the highest stats across the country. I know that you've worked within a lot of spaces that involve Wāhine Māori. I won't mention the spaces, I'll let you talk about them. But is there any reason of like why you think that is? Why our mama Māori decide?
I think there are a whole variety of reasons, and it depends who, and I think it depends where they are in their life's journey to what that looks like and why that happens.
Yeah.
It's a really, really tough place being Wāhine Māori in Aotearoa, no matter what we like to believe. The system's not set up for women in general. You know, it's a patriarchal society. And unfortunately, our men have benefited from a patriarchal society. You know, we see lots of things that have happened for them. I don't understand why men do karakia. What's that about? I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
You know, if women are the keepers of our Wairoa space and the protectors of that realm and the ones that open that up, why are our men doing karakia? My understanding of my growing up, it was women that always did karakia. Karanga, karakia for women, and men stood when they did whakōrero. So why has that changed?
What changed? What influenced it to change?
The church. The church. Because, you know, if you think about Christianity, it's only in modern history that women are allowed to be the minister or the priest, and they're not allowed to be priests, but the minister, you know, the people that lead the congregation, the people that say the prayers. You know, women, I grew up with women in churches that still had to wear bloody veils.
Oh my gosh.
You know, had to cover their hair in church. Like, what's that about?
Yeah.
So I think our men have benefited hugely from patriarchy. So if they've benefited, then we've actually come down a rung.
Yeah.
Because it was always about balance. You know, in everything, in our whole world, it's about balance, you know, male and female, whatever. So if men have elevated, then where has that left us? We've lost a space. And I think that's a big proportion of why we have so many. Health systems don't suit us.
Yes.
Birth doesn't suit us. Mental health.
Yeah.
You know, don't talk about that. We don't talk about mental health. It's getting better. Like, I really admire young people around how we talk about mental health.
Yeah.
I do wonder if we've gone to the extreme, but that might be my 60-year-old brain thinking like that.
Why do you think we've gone to the extreme?
Because it's easy to go, I'm stressed, and I know I've talked about this. I'm stressed, this is stressful, rather than actually I've just got a bit of pressure at this point in time.
Yeah.
Because stress is a really terrible place to be. And it's different than being under pressure.
Yeah.
Like, it is really different. And I say that knowing, you know, with my own mental health journey, it's a really ugly, ugly place to be when you're under stress, and that ends up with things like PTSD and all the rest.
Yeah.
So pressure's okay, you know, like pressure's part of
Part of life.
part of life, and growth. But stress isn't. That's unhealthy. Yeah, look, patriarchy is still alive and well in our country and in society. And as much as we like to think it's not, And there are lots of things that have got better. But, yeah.
What do you think, what are we missing? What do you think we need to do to get to a point where our mama Māori feel well, like wellness?
I think we need to really honour the sanctity of women in general. And that goes from birth through to death.
Yeah.
You know, like, how can we be well in ourselves if historically we have been so badly damaged in colonisation, you know, patriarchy, all of those spaces? Our status of the keepers of whakapapa has dropped. That, you know, we are the products of the effects of colonisation and religion.
You know what I found? I found it quite hard, and let me know if you've experienced this too, when I've walked into spaces as Wāhine Māori and people look, and I'm brown, I look Māori, and so they'll ask me to either lead a karakia or lead a waiata or do something that's Māori, so their token tick list is ticked off. But I find it, I'm either listened to and almost a little bit of, I guess, intimidate people. Not that I'm intentionally trying to do that, but it's because I'm like unapologetically sitting in my Māoritanga, or I'm ignored. There's no in between. I've never actually found an in between where I feel safe enough to just be myself and I can blend in with everyone else, because you stick out. If you're Wāhine Māori who's walking into any room, you stick out like a sore thumb. And that could be for many reasons in many different contexts. Yesterday I went shopping with my son and I told him, baby, don't screw the receipt up, because he was screwing it up, ripping it up. And I go, baby, you can't, you're going to need it. And he goes, why? And I go, because you're brown, unfortunately. And I had to explain to him, Wāhine get it worse. If I walk in the makeup aisle, all eyes on me.
You know what's really interesting is a lot of my life experience looked really different because of my colouring and and how I look. So often I was never taken serious. Different now, I've got I wear a pukowai. But certainly before that, those times was often never taken seriously. Yeah. And didn't necessarily always experience the racism that you talk about in shops, but I see it now, which is really interesting.
Because you've got your kōwai on.
They know the minute I walk into a shop who I am.
And you can feel it, right? You can feel their eyes on you. Yeah.
It's a really interesting space. But, you know, pre-pukowai, it was always, to a huge degree, fighting for recognition around my knowledge. And because my reo's not great, if you don't have reo, then you don't know anything, which is often the way. And I don't look the part. And often I don't look the part for what comes out of my mouth. Yeah. So it is what it is, you know, like, and you just have to, like, I don't really care any longer. People see, hear, take me, listen to me in whatever way they choose. That's not my issue any longer.
I feel like when you did get your kōwai, what was the reason that made you want to get it?
I always knew I would have one. Always. It was never not going to happen. I wanted my mokopuna for pukowai to be part of their visual life.
I love that.
It was so that actually it wasn't just a picture in a book. And I knew for my direct descendants, and I'm talking about my nieces and nephews and all that, I was probably the only one that even if my older sister had been alive, it wouldn't have been her journey, because she's not quite as out front as I am. I wanted it to be normal. I wanted them to grow up having seen somebody
with a kōwai.
Yeah.
That's cool. I never saw that. I never saw that growing up.
No.
And I actually wanted to touch on it. I wanted to touch on how I know you and what I call you. Hine Ki Te Wheiao, when we first started Hine Ki Te Wheiao, it was, not going to lie, it was really nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
I was really nervous, and I know you remember what I was
Yeah,
like at that
I
time. And pulling together like this national board, and we're trying to make systems change, but we're also trying to spotlight and do advocacy stuff. And I think it all just became really, it was a lot to try, for anyone to try and carry. And I think as someone who's quite new to the health sector, it gets quite hard when you're trying so hard to prove yourself. And we did just speak about how it's hard being a Wāhine Māori in general, already trying to prove yourself. But I think when I first saw you, the name that I call Cindy, I call you Kwikwi.
Yeah.
And that name is caught on. Everyone's copying now. Your name is
I
now
know where
Kwikwi.
it comes from.
But I was just wondering, how have you managed to stay in this fight for so long without going, F this, I don't want to do this anymore?
Because I totally believe in things being better. You know, anyone that sees my LinkedIn sees, you know, people have beautiful titles of what they are, and mine is social justice agitator.
Yeah, I love it.
That's it. I mean, that speaks to who I am in essence. And don't get me wrong, it's got me in trouble. And it still gets me in trouble. Like, I have moments where I get really in trouble. I say things that I go, whoa, what was that about? But I was always destined to be that person, I think. And, you know, some of that goes back to my older sister. I was always the one that agitated behind the scenes, even with her. She had other ways of getting her point across.
Yeah.
We laugh about it and say she could take the skin off your back without you even knowing until it hurt.
What does that mean?
She was amazing with language.
Oh, okay.
Amazing in te reo Māori and amazing in English.
Wow.
So she could, and she would say things that you hadn't realised what was behind it until she'd said it, and you go, whoa.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm out the front. I say it, you know, as soon as it comes out my mouth, you know what the intentions are. It's there. I want to go back to what you said to me before around your first time in Hine Ki Te Wheiao, and it's what I was wanting to get to when I went off tangent. Is I just, you know, I saw and this is not derogatory, a young woman with amazing talent that was too afraid to stand in her talent. And that's what I saw. And it's like, if I can do nothing else, you know, like when I retire, because there will be a retirement of whatever that means, because retirement isn't really retirement. When I'll go off and do other things, you know, if I can have been a support for other young women to stand in their own talent, and I'm not going to say mana because that's not my place, but to stand in their own talent and understand how good they are, then my job's done. You know, I talk about it with succession planning, you know.
Yeah.
I want to sit on the couch eventually. I want to sit on the couch and watch and you are one of them, all of these amazing young women do amazing things and go, oh shit, I had a moment in, you know, like a moment in time that helped them get to where they're going to be. Because, you know, I only got to where I am because of some really, really, really amazing women that I've had in my life.
Yeah.
Some of them have been some of the hardest times in my life. Yeah. But I'm able to look back and go, yeah, I really disliked you then and I really dislike you now. But you taught me a whole heap of stuff. Yeah. And I have to take that along, you know. And I was really privileged to have some blimmin' amazing women, Wāhine Māori.
Around you.
Yeah.
That's like me. I feel like, and thank you, I get really weird when I receive these types of compliments. I know you know.
You know, one of the things that I brought Cassie up with, she was brought up in Asia, and you and her have huge similarities but huge differences as well, is that when people compliment you, you say thank you. And that's it. Because, and it's our habit, because in Asia they do. They're really comfortable with being complimented and all the rest, or my experience in Indonesia. Over here we go, oh, you're really good at that. And you go, oh, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But actually that diminishes the kōrero that this person has given you. They've said to you, this is how I view you, and I think you're this person. So why do you smack them down?
Yeah, it is.
So why do we smack them down and go, no, that's not right, you're wrong, you've got this, don't say that, I'm not that person. Instead of going, thank you, thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I have noticed that in my own kind of like circles, I do have some mean wahine Māori around me. And I think it took me to just actually step back and go, whoa, like really take everything in.
You're always destined for this. You know, like this, we were destined to do what we were meant to do way before. And we come in, I know I've talked to you about this before. Don't forget the amazing women that might not be here present with you, that have been part of your journey, because that is really important to recognise as well. Yeah.
I struggle with that.
I know.
I still struggle with accepting that.
I hear you and I see it, and that's why I keep reminding you, because sometimes that's what people are put in.
Put in your lives to remind us of the why.
Yeah. Because if we all had that, you know, like if all of us were reminded about the greatness of those that have been before, and those that are going to come after us, and those that are in our life now, and the greatness of me, then I think it would be a way easier place for us as Wāhine Māori. Because we don't have to compare ourselves to anybody else but ourselves.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. That's what I want us to remember.
I'm not going to cry.
Nah, you're not.
It's shocking. Okay. I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to leave that there. On behalf of Hine Ki Te Wheiao, e mihi nui ana ki a koe koe. Thank you for coming in today. When I come down to Taranaki and see you, that's the mihi that's coming from the pai. Kia ora koe pehana. But we really appreciate your pukinga. That's what I wanted to talk about, actually. When Hine Ki Te Wheiao was first established, we wanted to select kind of like a pai māreikura, where we had all of these different, I think you're a tohunga, but where we had all these different mana māreikura there to protect us. And I do say protect, and I mean it in every aspect. And you were one of those people. So this is a little bit weird. It's like Hine Ki Te Wheiao giving itself a mihi. But thank you. We really appreciate it. You coming on today to share your pukinga with us. If you like this episode, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Hine Ki Te Wheiao.